Hey guys, this is the Instant Camera Guy here. I wanted to make a video explaining the differences between the viewfinders on the Type 100 automatic land cameras. Namely the standard Polaroid twin window viewfinder and the later Zeiss Ikon Viewfinder. Now, I'm making this video because it's a fairly common question that I get asked, and there also appears to be sort of a lot of myths surrounding the viewfinders as far as which one is better than the other. So I'll start by just explaining the standard Polaroid viewfinder that came out on these cameras. So the standard Polaroid viewfinder is also known as the twin window viewfinder, named twin window because there are in fact two windows that you look through. So the smaller circular window here is the rangefinder window, and the main rectangular window is the viewfinder window. So basically, to compose your shot, you're looking through the circular window, and like all rangefinders, you're waiting until the two images overlap, and when they are overlapped, your subject is in focus. Then, when you've got your subject in focus, you would move your eye to the rectangular viewfinder and look through to compose your shot. Later, Polaroid would team up with German optics company Zeiss Ikon to produce the Zeiss, or single-windowed viewfinder. Called the single-window viewfinder because, you guessed it, there is only one window at the back. So basically, the Zeiss Ikon Finder combined the rangefinder and the viewfinder windows into one package. And that's basically where the differences lie. However, this is where the myths begin. A lot of people on internet forums, Flickr for example, or just you hear people in the streets will say that the Zeiss Ikon Finder is 1,000,000 times better than the standard. And of course it has to be because it has the name Zeiss Ikon on it. Much like Leica, the brand name Zeiss Ikon is associated with incredibly high quality products, thus this viewfinder must be 1,000 times better. And while it's not incorrect, it's also really not true. And I'll explain why. The only real difference between the two is the combined window, which just makes it slightly more easier to, well, I say easier, slightly more quicker to focus. However, that comes as a drawback. It comes with a drawback, I should say. And the drawback is that with the viewfinder window on the Zeiss Ikon, it's actually mounted off to the side. Now, for those that know a little bit about cameras and optics and how viewfinders work, that leads to a little thing called parallax error. Now, parallax error is basically what happens when your viewfinder and lens are separate. Obviously, one is not mounted in the same place as the actual lens is, and so your view is always going to be a little bit off. Now, this really happens in two planes, one horizontal and the other one vertical. Now, the vertical plane's obviously always going to be off, just due to the viewfinder's orientation above the lens. However, having the viewfinder window slightly off to the side also means that the parallax is slightly off on a horizontal plane. Now, to correct for this, Zeiss Ikon actually built in some little frame lines which do adjust. Sort of like that. It's very hard for me to show through the footage, but there are photos online that will help explain, if you look hard enough. And so, what happens is, although you're able to find the view quicker on this, the parallax error is actually slightly greater, and although there are moving frame lines, it's actually a little harder to frame your subject, which can be detrimental if you're sort of composing a shot that uses like a perfect rule of thirds formula. Now, the standard viewfinder has the viewing window smack bang in the center, meaning the parallax is only off in the horizontal axis. Now, they actually combated that by making the center of the viewfinder tilt, like so. I don't know if you can really see that or make it out. But basically, inside that centerpiece, there's a little glass cube, and as you focus the bellows, it moves up and down, which helps control for the parallax. So this actually makes the standard viewfinder slightly more accurate for framing. Although you do have to take the extra sort of half a second to move one eye from the rangefinder window to the viewing window. The rangefinders on these are also a lot easier to service. So at the back there are two screws, and it's just a simple matter of taking those two screws out. The entire back of the rangefinder comes off, allowing you to use an air blower or a little Q-tip or a cotton swab to basically clean out the insides and get your viewfinder looking $1,000,000. Which is handy if you've been, like, I don't know, out in a dust storm, or your camera's been sitting around for ages, getting dusty, and it's all built up in the viewfinder. The Zeiss Ikon Finder, however, is infinitely more complicated. So you have to remove two screws from the side, and then remove a whole bunch on the inside of a much more complicated viewfinder, which makes it a heck of a lot harder to clean. As far as accuracy goes, the two are completely identical. One is no more accurate than the other. They do actually offer the same level of performance. And this is reflected in two of Polaroid's most professional cameras, the Polaroid 180 and the 195. The Polaroid 180, with its f4.5 lens, was given a Zeiss Ikon Finder, such as the one on this camera. The Polaroid 195, which actually had a faster lens, was given the standard viewfinder. The reason behind this is there was really no difference in the performance. Literally the only difference is the fact that one is a single window finder and one is a twin window finder. Apart from that, they perform identical. So, you really have to decide. The Zeiss Ikon Finder cameras are typically worth a lot more money, and that's because if you flip up the viewfinder, it says at the bottom, Zeiss Ikon, made in West Germany. And that's pretty much about it. And so you pay the extra for the brand name. You're not paying for any more accuracy, you're only paying for a slightly more convenient focusing system at the cost of a slightly less accurate viewfinder. So, if you only care about fast shooting and you need to have focus done in the quickest time possible, then the Zeiss Ikon Finder is for you. Or if you can spare the extra half a second that it takes to take your eye from the circular window to the rectangular window in order to compose your shot, then the standard viewfinder is for you. But ultimately, there's no real difference between the two as far as performance goes, and that's really what I'd like to sort of get you to take out of this video. So there you have it. The standard viewfinder was used on about 80% of all Polaroid cameras, as well as the folding down design featured on this camera. They also had a fixed viewfinder. It works exactly the same and has the same performance, it's just fixed in place rather than being able to fold down. And yeah, that's it. Polaroid also, on the Zeiss Ikon Finders, had a large window and a small window. Now, the only difference between that is that one had a slightly larger opening for the viewfinder at the back, and one had a slightly smaller opening. The slightly smaller opening means that it's one of the later finders, and Polaroid decided to make the opening a little smaller so that it was actually easier to focus, because effectively what you're looking through when you see through this viewfinder is a large viewfinder, and then a small portion of that in the center is the actual range-finding mechanism. And so by making the opening smaller, it actually drew your eyes to the center so that you could focus a little easier. With that being said, the larger windowed versions are easier for people who wear spectacles or like shooting with glasses on. But again, there's no real difference in performance. I know some people prefer the large window versions, some people prefer the small window versions. It's really all up to you. So basically, make an informed decision and decide what's best for you before relying on what people on forums say. Thanks for watching, guys.